What's up everybody, it's Dave here with comicsgameslife, and this is my video on Batman, Master of the Future. Now this came out in 1992 and was the successor of the original 19th century Batman story, Gotham by Gaslight. Our story begins about 18 months after Batman defeated Jack the Ripper, and he's just put his cape and cowl into retirement. But it seems that Bruce Wayne still needs to scratch the itch to delve into Gotham's seedier side of the city, as we see him having a good time gambling and watching some underground bare-knuckle boxing fights. But then Bruce's friend Teddy gets mad because the tip that he had didn't pay off, so he starts to get into an argument with the winner's manager, and the manager claps back at him, saying, "You're calling me a cheat? Why don't you come in here and fight my guy in a fair fight?" And with the crowd cheering him on, wanting Dex, the behemoth of a man who just won that previous match, to fight this little old guy Teddy, Teddy is spooked, and he's probably thinking that I should have kept my mouth shut. But that's when Bruce steps up, and he tells everybody, "I'll fight your man." And then he turns to Teddy and says, "If I were you, I would bet heavily on me." As Bruce and Dexter prepare to fight, we all know exactly how this is going to go down, because years of training and mastering several martial arts styles, plus the experience of dealing with Gotham's worst of the worst, Bruce takes this guy out in a fashion that shocks and awes the crowd. Now we didn't actually get to see what happens, but by the looks on their faces, it was something no one was expecting. So walking out of there $1,600 richer, Bruce suggests that they give their newfound winnings over to a charity. And Teddy is reminded of Bruce's fiancée, Julie Madison, who runs her own charity called Miss Madison's Orphan Relief Fund. And he tells Bruce, "I wonder what she would have thought of that display of masculinity back there." And Bruce simply says, "I don't even think she would have believed it. Although she is devoted to me, she sees me as kind of a bore. And I suspect she may be attracted to a more dashing type of fellow." Now in the following panels, we're going to see Julie retelling to a friend her first encounter with Batman. One late night, her, a doctor, and a nurse friend of hers were walking through the streets of Gotham. And they all knew that this was a bad idea. But it just so happens they were returning late from a previous engagement, so they had to do what they had to do. Although unfortunately, but rather expected, they ran into some trouble, and they were jumped by a group of bandits. Although outmanned and outmuscled, the old doctor stepped up to the plate to defend his two women companions. It was a brave thing to do, but in this type of situation, it's not the thought that counts, but the action. Luckily for them, who should appear but the man of action himself, Batman, as he puts on a display of martial prowess and delivers foot, fist, and fury to the bandits that put his would-be bride in danger. Now that it was all over, Julie came to her nerve and approached Batman, but he turned his face away from her. Now in her mind, she thought he was being shy, but Batman was just trying to hide his face as much as possible so that she wouldn't detect that he was really Bruce Wayne, her fiance. And with a simple goodbye, he scaled up the nearest building and went off into the night. Now her friend is totally not buying this, because she's saying, "I heard he was a vampire or some kind of monster." And Julie assures her that, "I was standing as close to him as I am to you now. And I guarantee you that was a man in that suit. A very special man. A man that's needed to guard Gotham from everything that we're going to face in this new century. Someone to prevent this city from falling into the abyss. But for some reason, he's vanished." Now Julie's a smart woman, so she isn't just love struck by this mysterious man in black. She sees what's going on in the city. She cares for the orphans of Gotham every day. So she sees the poverty, the plight, the crime, and the corruption, and she believes it's only going to get worse. And those sentiments aren't just her own. So as we see a now Commissioner Gordon thinking those same thoughts, as he's pacing back and forth wondering, where is this Batman? He came to Gotham City out of nowhere and solved one of its greatest crimes. Stuck around for about a year, protecting Gotham again and again and again, and then right when we need him most, he just vanishes. And the reason why they need him the most right now is because there's going to be this large World's Fair type of event called the American Discovery Exposition right here in Gotham City. And Gordon knows that it's going to attract people from all over to come to this fair. So it's going to attract thieves, con men, killers, and all sorts of unsavory types. And GCPD is already stretched thin. There's no way they can account for this surge in the population. And he says, in this extraordinary time, we need extraordinary help. But where is he? Back at Wayne Manor, we can see that Bruce is conflicted as he's talking with Alfred, because he's brought to justice his parents' killers, and that was the motivation behind him becoming Batman and preventing anything like that to happen to anyone else. And he continued fighting crime for about a year after that, but he struggles with the rightness of what he's doing. Could he do more to help Gotham as Bruce Wayne as opposed to Batman? Instead of beating up the criminals in the streets as Batman, could he do something as Bruce Wayne to prevent them from becoming criminals in the first place? Especially since he's going to be married soon. Filling his life up with more appropriate things seems to make the most sense, so he hopes that Gotham City can do without the Batman. So the next morning, Mayor Tolliver is having a big meeting with all the important people of Gotham City. So real quick, in Gotham by Gaslight, we saw that Gordon was a detective and Tolliver was the commissioner. But since Batman didn't take the credit for solving the whole Jack the Ripper thing, the credit went to Gordon and Tolliver. So now in this story, Gordon's been promoted to commissioner and Tolliver has been elected mayor. And it hasn't curbed his tendency to be disagreeable because he's arguing with everyone there. As people are making their pleas to hold off or to not have this giant gala event because the city is pretty much bankrupt. And putting on this exposition is going to take a lot of funds. And there's lots of different programs to help the city that have been put on hold just to make this event happen. For example, a man named Mr. Claypool, he's sheepishly asking about his slum renewal program and when that's going to get up and going, but the mayor shuts him down and he's telling everybody, don't you understand, if I put on this event, the exposition will bring in the money. It will create the jobs needed and all your worries will be put to rest. And then out of nowhere, a man shows up at the window. Now people are gasping and wondering what's going on. Who is he? Where did he come from? Because they're on the 9th floor. He didn't just climb up, but he's definitely there now. And this Frenchman speaks to the crowd, calling them fools, saying that you dream of engines that befoul the air and factories that muddy up the waters, and you dare call that progress. I am Alexandre Looy, master of the future, man of tomorrow, and I bring you my terms. You make me master of the city, and the city will be saved. But if you disagree, I will hit you with the fire of the sun and burn your city to the ground. And this leaves the people shocked, angered, and concerned. But Tolliver's telling the police in the building to get this lunatic. And just like his entrance, Alexandre makes a grand exit and leaps from the window. And as everybody rushes to see where he went, looking down from the building, they don't see anybody. It's like he just disappeared. After reading this part, I had kind of like a fun thought and wondered if whatever this guy just did, Batman copies this technique and uses it to do his iconic disappearing acts. So now everybody at the meeting is telling Tolliver, you gotta shut this thing down. Not only was it a financial risk, but now we have this lunatic threatening to set the city on fire. But he doubles down and says, how can one man do anything like that to our city? Nope, this thing is gonna happen. In 6 weeks, we are gonna have that exposition. Later that evening, Bruce and Julie are having dinner. And of course, this is what their conversation is revolving around. But to me, the most shocking thing about this scene is the fact that Bruce Wayne smokes. I get that he's not Batman anymore, so he's not so concerned about his health, but come on, Bruce. Now, Julie starts to go on about how we need Batman now, especially with someone like this out there. The police department, they're not equipped to fight somebody like this. She believes Batman is their only hope. And Bruce jokes with her and pretends to be jealous, but she's being firm, she's being serious. We need someone who's preparing for a mean tomorrow, and at the same time being the champion of today. Now, I know the Batman side of Bruce's brain is tingling right now, because I'm pretty sure he thinks that she's right, but he's also uncertain of how much of a threat this Alexandre is. And unbeknownst to anyone else, Alexandre actually has an accomplice, a mysterious benefactor who's aiding Alexandre in his vision to recreate the world of tomorrow. And of course, this mysterious person isn't doing it for free, but he will be reaping some sort of reward once Alexandre comes through with his threat. And as they part ways, he's gonna once again dive out the window, except this time we get to see what he had up his sleeve. More like what he has in the air. Because he doesn't just jump down to the ground below, but he leaps to a rope ladder that's attached to a Zeppelin. So when he jumped out of the window the first time and everybody was looking down to the ground, he was climbing his way up to the clouds. So while the construction of the exposition is going on, the mayor has arranged a walkthrough of the site with some of the people who were at the previous meeting. Now, 2 of those attendees were Bruce Wayne and Commissioner Gordon. All of a sudden, this clown-faced contraption on wheels comes speeding by. And as it gets close to the people, 2 flaps open up and exposes a Gatling gun and starts shooting wildly into the crowd, not just aiming for those in high society, but also at the groundskeepers and the construction workers. And Bruce bodyguards Mayor Tolliver and pushes him out of the way. And Gordon pulls out his sidearm and starts firing at the thing, but nothing's stopping this spray of gunfire. So it just so happens Bruce finds a pole lying next to him. He grabs it and launches it like a javelin. It disables the Gatling gun and prevents anybody else from getting shot. Immediately, they go and inspect this machine, and they find a note from Alexandre saying, "You ignored me, the city burns, you die." So Tolliver, being more headstrong and angry than ever, he says, "We are going to make this thing happen. Gordon, bring on more men, beef up security." And Gordon's scratching his head. He said, "More security is not going to help. What we need is Batman." And Bruce makes a comment saying that, people think that the Batman is a lunatic as well. And Gordon says, "I doubt that, but maybe it's true. Regardless, if that's what it takes to get the job done." And Bruce is back at the Batcave, and he's thinking deeply over what Gordon has said. Should the Batman come back? Do we send a crazy man to stop a crazy man? Perhaps now that my personal quest is over, maybe a public one awaits. And then he looks up and says, "What do you say, old man? Should we resurrect you for the common good?" And shortly after, Alfred enters the Batcave, and he's looking for Bruce, asking, Sir, are you down here?" Oh no. and Alfred visibly taken off guard because the sight that he sees is one that he never thought he would see again, and that's Bruce in the Batsuit, ready for action. Now, I really do like the 19th century Batsuit that we've seen in this story, as well as Gotham by Gaslight, but unfortunately, like the last story, we don't really get to see any of his gadgets. I know front and center we see his 2 daggers, which we did see him use in the previous story. So as much as I would like to have seen some of his bat vehicles or grappling gun or batarangs, if they couldn't do it in a way that would fit into the story and make sense with the time period, then it's better that they just left it out, because what we got is still really good. Now we've arrived to the grand opening of the fair, and as Tolliver is getting ready, Alexandre crashes through the window, and just as Tolliver is telling his butler to go get the police, Alexandre pulls out a pistol and delivers a headshot to the butler. Now pointing the gun on Tolliver, Alexandre forces him out the window and up the ladder to his Zeppelin. And as they enter into its command bridge, Tolliver gets to see how much of a lunatic Alexandre really is. Because while they're there, he keeps referring to his co-pilot Antonio and talking to him like they're great friends. And when Tolliver finally makes it up to the front of the bridge, he sees that Antonio is just a robot. And even though he has a smile on his face, I'm pretty sure he's not as charming as Wilson from Castaway. But anyway, at the fairgrounds, everybody's there for this big grand opening and nobody can find where Tolliver is. And they're grumpy and upset because they spent all this money building this thing from the ground up, and the person in charge who is convincing everybody to do it isn't even here yet. And that's when Bruce starts to hear some sort of buzzing. And that's coming from the Zeppelin that's approaching the fairgrounds high up in the sky. And Alexandre is showing Tolliver exactly what he has planned. And he shows him that on the side of the Zeppelin, there's this giant death ray that would make any Bond villain jealous. Because what it is a series of magnifying glasses put together in this long tube. And as it aligns with the sun, it produces a beam of light so strong that it will set afire anything that it touches. And right now he is burning down the fairgrounds with all of those people in it. Now remember, this is opening day. Not just the people of Gotham are here, but people from other states and other cities. They came all this way to take part in the festivities and the events of the exposition. So this place is jam-packed. And Tolliver is pleading with Alexandre to stop. Stop this madness. I'll give you whatever you want. And Alexandre says, this is what I want. So let me do you and your people a favor, because right now they need you. And I plan to get you down there as quickly as possible. He grabs Tolliver and he throws him out the Zeppelin. And while the people on the ground are panicking, they're still wondering, where is Tolliver? Where is the mayor? And he comes crashing through one of the skylights to his death. Now with the fire and the panicking going on, Bruce has lost sight of Julie and he's looking around, he's calling her name. And we also notice that the death ray is also firing down at the slums of the city. And the fire brigade, they're trying to do their best to evacuate people from the slums. And they're having a difficult time because the city is more packed than usual. And now you have fires at the fair and in the ghettos. And Bruce, he looks up and he sees the Zeppelin. And he sees that's where that buzzing is coming from. And he looks around and he sees something. And he thinks to himself, I can use that to get up there. And as he's making his way to what he sees, he's stopped by Alfred. And Alfred shoves a suitcase in the hands of Bruce. I thought you might need this. And Bruce puts a hand on his shoulder and tells him thank you. Because like every other version of Alfred that's been created, although he supports Bruce being Batman, he also doesn't want him to be Batman because he fears that one day he's not going to come back home. But the people need Batman. And right now, Julie especially needs him, because even though they got separated, she didn't just go run and scream and hide in a corner. She went to go help those that she could help, and she finds a little girl amidst all this chaos and destruction, and she runs to her and grabs her in her arms. But the structure that they're right next to is on fire and is about to collapse on them. But through the smoke and mirrors appears Batman, rescuing her for the second time. But once Julie and the girl are safe, Batman turns his attention to Alexandre. He goes back and grabs what he saw on display earlier, which happens to be a glider, and then climbs to the top of a gondola tower, pulling the glider up behind him. And once ready, he launches into flight. Now the Zeppelin is still higher in the sky than he is, but from the heat from the fires below, it's giving the glider extra lift, which allows Batman to close the distance just enough to grab the bottom rung of the rope ladder. As Batman sneaks his way on board, he catches Alexandre completely off guard, and he unsheathes his sword ready for a duel. But Batman is ready for a street fight, and he grabs anything nearby, which just so happens to be a globe, and throws it right at Alexandre. And this collision causes him to smash into Antonio, which separates his robot head from his robot body, and immediately Leroy is distraught, saying, "You've killed my best friend. For that, you will die." And Batman finds an extra sword hanging on the wall and begins to get the best of Alexandre in this fight. But a well-placed kick stuns Batman and allows Alexandre to escape to the large inner portions of the Zeppelin's balloon. And this is where both men duke it out in swashbuckling fashion. Now, although Batman loses his sword, he is definitely not unarmed, because using the environment around him plus his martial arts skills, Leroy doesn't stand a chance. But something's happening. Batman notices that everything is shaking and starting to fall apart, and he's telling Alexandre they have to get out of here here, because during this fight with Antonio disabled, there was no one there to regulate the controls, including the gas main. And Leroy just takes this as Batman trying to distract him, and he's gone mad just trying to win this fight. But Batman is done with this, and he makes his escape just as the Zeppelin goes down in flames. Fortunately, it was hovering over a body of water, so it doesn't crash land into the city, causing any more damage. But Alfred, Julie, and Gordon knew that Batman was on that Zeppelin as well, so they don't know if he made it or not. But as we see from the panel below, Batman's gloved hand emerges and he makes his way out. So the damage to Gotham City was confined to some parts of the fair as well as the slums. And this had Batman thinking, why the slums? Because LaCroix swore to destroy the fair and the city's finest. Going after the slums doesn't make any sense, so that's when Batman went digging. And this is how we found LaCroix's mysterious benefactor, which turned out to be Franklin Claypool. This was the gentleman who was at the original exposition meeting, and he was asking to see when they were going to fund the slum renewal program. And this is why he was helping Leroy in the first place, because Claypool actually bought all the real estate in the slums, and he was wanting the city to start this program so that the city would dump money into rehabbing and rebuilding this whole area of the slums. And at that point, his plan was to sell it off to private investors and make a ton of money. But since the slum renewal program was on hold due to the exposition, he would help Leroy with his plan if he would also destroy the slum area. So if he couldn't get rich by flipping these properties, he was going to get rich from all the money the insurance would provide. Now this is a very Weasley thing to do, but he didn't understand the extent of Alexandre's lunacy. He had no idea this whole debacle will cost the lives of 133 people. And guilt-stricken by this, when Batman confronts him, Batman really only met him halfway, because Claypool just started confessing and telling him exactly what was going on. And Batman had already told Gordon what he came up with, so right as this conversation is happening, Gordon walks in to arrest Claypool. And our story ends with Bruce and Julie taking a walk through the woods on the outskirts of Gotham City. And she's telling Bruce that I hope Batman is here to stay. And Bruce says, who knows, this Batman is a mystery. And then Julie checks Bruce right there in that moment, because she tells Bruce, you of all people would know, because you're Batman. And Bruce is shocked and asking, what are you talking about? How do you know? And she says at the time when he rescued her and the little girl during the fair, that regardless of the suit he wears and the mask he has on his face, she would recognize the eyes of the man she loves anywhere. And he's asking, okay, so now that you know, what will you do? And she'll do exactly what she's always been doing. She stands by the man she loves and will support and encourage him in any way possible. And as they hug in a loving embrace, she tells him, Bruce, Gotham needs Batman. Please take care of them. So that completes our story of Batman, Master of the Future. I really enjoyed the writing as well as the art in this story. Really sounded how they would be speaking during that time period. Kind of sort of prim and proper. The story itself reminded me of something out of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle or a Jules Verne novel. And the artist did a really great job with the 19th century aesthetic. I think pairing Batman with steampunk can be a win-win as long as it's done conservatively and they do things that make sense. Because by going over the top and adding all sorts of gears and machines and mechanisms, I think it would be really distracting and it would pull you away from the story instead of trying to immerse you into it. But the creators, I don't think they did that. I think they did a really good job. So if you'd like to own a copy of this, go ahead and visit your local comic shop, search through their bins, see what they got, maybe support another shop that's too far away from home, and you can order online. However you like to do it. I thank you guys for listening. I love and appreciate you all, and keep on supporting your local comic and game shops. And if you have a friend or family member who has a birthday or something like that coming up, instead of throwing $20 at Walmart or Target, try finding something at the same place where you get your comics and cards. Who knows, you might be introducing them to their next favorite hobby. With that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys next time.